Hello, in this video we will discuss about the cerebellum. That is the part of the brain, which that is the cerebellum. Behind the brain is the lower part, is attached with the bones and medulla. So, what is the function of cerebellum? The cerebellum is important for making postural adjustment in order to maintain balance, and through its input from vestibular receptors and proprioceptor, it modulates the commands to motor neurons to compensate for shift in body position or change in load upon muscle. So the change in load upon muscle. So let's begin to understand first of all the anatomical aspect of the cerebellum, and next we will discuss about the mechanism, how it will work for the maintenance and the smooth coordination and body moves, balance, posture, prevent to fall also. So this is the brain which that contains cerebrum, and cerebellum is behind here, you can understand. But here is the spinal cord, and this is the cerebellum, and this is the medulla and bones. So let's draw a bigger picture to understand the further more anterior lobe, the posterior lobe. So we will discuss now. So here I am drawing, this is the bones and the medulla, while this is the cerebellum. Cerebellum contain three lobe: the anterior lobe, primary fissure, which that is the medium, and the posterior lobe and the posterior lateral fissure. Basically it is two lobe, not three, but you can classify into the two lobe. And but further on we will understand about also the middle lobe, but in this diagram you can understand that is the sagittal cross section will show the two lobe. But next we will discuss about the middle lobe also. So this is the structure which that's contain middle is the vermis, and this is the superior surface, remember, and this is the paravermis. And remember that this is the anterolateral, and basically this is, here I am drawing the anterior lobe and the middle lobe. So first of all we should need to understand the other parts, the superior vermis, basically the containing of the culmen and declive and folium, these three part, and the central lobe. The central lobe, here you can see this is the central lobe, and this is the anterior cerebellar notch, and this is the culmen, and the central lobe and the declive and folium, which that is the part of the superior vermis. While here you can see that is the posterior cerebellar notch. That was the anterior cerebellar notch, but this is the posterior cerebellar notch. While this is the quadrangular lobule and primary fissure, horizontal fissure, and simplex lobule, which that is the part of the anterior lobe, while this is the middle lobe, which contain a post-lunate fissure, superior semi-lunar lobule, and horizontal fissure, and the inferior semi-lunar lobule. So you can understand this is the part, and we are understanding about the anatomy of the cerebellum. So anyhow, let's draw a inferior surface of the cerebellum. The inferior mean the inferior, that was the superior, but let's begin to understand the inferior, which that's contain anterior lobe and the folliculonodular lobe and the middle lobe. So this is the three lobe which that we can see in this diagram. So in this way, here is the inferior vermis. Basically is the inferior vermis, and it means that collectively the four lobe can be, because the folliculonodular lobe. So this is the anterior lobe contain the ala of central lobule and superior, and the middle and the inferior part, which that is the cerebellar peduncle. The cerebellar peduncle contains three parts: is the superior and middle and inferior, which that is attached with the brain. So remember, on the other hand, here is you can see this is the follicular nodular lobe, which that contains posterolateral fissure and retro in, retro in, retro retro retronuclear fissure. But here is the middle lobe contain tonsil, the biventral lobe, lobule, and secondary post pyramidal fissure, and the horizontal fissure, and the inferior semilunar lobule. So anyhow, in this way, this is the just little bit about the introduction of the anatomy of the cerebellum. Let's begin to understand the function of the cerebellum, the mechanism for the processing and learning. So remember that. So let's begin to understand this is a brain contains cerebellum, and this cerebellum cross section show the cortex and the inner white matter tract used for the nerves firing and nerve signal, and this is the deep cerebellar nuclei which that will target to the for processing, and in this way the input to output will go, and in this way give the response the cerebellar output. So let's begin to understand from the stimulus. Stimulus is the input. When we will provide the input as a stimulus, so the vestibuloreceptors and proprioceptors, which that is the sensory receptors. This vestibuloreceptor and proprioceptors, which that is the sensation. After the sensation, the sensory receptor will receive the signal through stimulus, for example jerk or other things for balance, and in this way it will send to the sensory neuron through sensory neuron to the spinal cord, and this is the ascending pathway if the hand is using for the response for the stimulus. So in this way, the spinal cord will transmit the signal toward the hypothalamus after to the hypothalamus no thalamus, thalamus to the cortex, the cerebrum. After the motor cortex will receive the signal to processing through interneuron, will transmit the signal to the mosi fiber, as well as spinal cord itself will transmit the signal to the mosi fiber. So the mosi fiber is used for the learning of the balance or etc. during the early development of the person. So this is the part of the cerebellum, which that's contain molecular layer and the cerebellar cortex layer, and on the other hand the granular layer. So the cerebellar cortex layer contain Purkinje cell layer. So this is contain Purkinje cell, while this is a granular cell due to the granular layer. Granular cells will arise the branches, and these branches will parallel, and this is known as the parallel fiber. This parallel fiber will transmit the signal after the receiving through the mosi fiber. Then mosi fiber will process, and in this way the mosi fiber will transmit the signal through neuron and the synapse with the granular cell, as well as the deep cerebral nuclei cell. But we will discuss later the deep cerebral nuclei, but first of all we should need to understand the granular cell. Here is the synapse will positive effect to firing the granular cell. After the firing the granular cell, if the requirement for the movement so the here is the inhibitory neuron will not work. This is the interneuron for unneeded movement. So in this way the GABA is used for the inhibition of the movement for the smooth coordination. So that is why here is this is the basically the inhibitory neuron will inhibit the parallel fiber for firing due to the GABA, which that will inhibit, and in this way here is basically if not inhibition because it will smooth work. So in this way here you can see this is the cycle will occur, and the inhibitor neuron can be inhibit through a other neuron, but in this case the inhibitory neuron will not inhibit, so it means the movement will stop. So the Purkinje cell layer. So the Purkinje cell layer contain here is Purkinje cell. This is Purkinje cell is used for the ventricle of the heart continuously firing, and in this way the smooth and coordination of the heart muscle and the arrhythmia prevention. and in this way the normal heartbeat can be regulated due to the normal function of the Purkinje cell. But on the other hand, here is the deep cerebral nucleus cell, which that Purkinje cell transmits the signal to the deep cerebral nuclear cell, as well as the mossy fiber also transmits the signal through a synapse, both synapse to the deep cerebral nuclei. This is the center. So remember this, a mossy fiber will transmit the signal and the Purkinje cell transmit the signal through a firing of the nerve impulse through synapse will activate. After the activation will lead to cerebral output, which that will maintain the movement, the maintain the other part of the body. While here is the inferior olivary nuclei, which that climbing fiber arise, the climbing fiber will climb, and in this way it will be collapsed to each other to form a collection with the Purkinje cell here. So in this way, here is the Purkinje cell. Basically, the inferior olivary nucleus will also maintain the Purkinje cell via a synapse with a parallel fiber. After the parallel fiber, the Purkinje cell will basically maintain the movement. So in this way, here is the cerebellar output can be through a deep cerebral nuclei, through a receiving of the information through mossy fiber as well as Purkinje cell after the processing, and in this way the movement is very important, and in this way you can understand the response. So here you can see this is basically you can understand this is the smooth coordination and body moves, the balance and posture prevent to fall. So in this way remember that the response is the smooth coordination, maintain the balance and moves and the change load of the muscle. So I hope you make sense about this is the cerebellum, and this is the quick overview about the cerebellum. Next video hopefully I will make another explanatory video about the mechanism of the Purkinje fibers as well as the input and output. So thanks for watching. Please make sure to subscribe, like and share. Bye.